Welcome to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Dame, holistic nutrition coach and speaker. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode on the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I'm being joined today by a very special guest and a new friend of mine. Andrea Caprio is here with us today. How are you doing, Andrea?
I'm wonderful, Danielle, and thanks so much for having me today on the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast.
Yes, well, I'm really excited to have this conversation for many reasons. And I know at the end we're going to be talking a little bit more, but Andrea is actually in the midst of putting together an incredible summit called the Food Freedom Festival that I am lucky enough to be a speaker on. And you're all going to be invited to that. And we're going to obviously, share a little bit more about that towards the end of this episode. But before we dive into that, Andrea, for those who don't know you or aren't familiar with your work, would love to hear a little bit of your story. What got you into the work that you're doing today, how you're helping people, and really what got you here?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think we all in this field came into it through our own health history, right? And for me, no different here. And basically, was obviously some years ago now, where I really felt, that my life health-wise was kind of in a downward spiral. Nothing too tragic, but there were a couple of telltale signs. I had weekly migraines or almost weekly migraines, and they were obviously bothering me and affecting my life and my work. I had put on a little bit weight and I never had really weight issues. I had bloating and all kind of digestive issues, and I just thought they were normal, right? And then also I really felt tired, and it was really fatigue, right? I was run down, always tired, and I just didn't feel right. And the one thing, and I never realized that was actually a health factor at that time, was I had hormone issues. And basically I had fibroids when I was much younger. And, they grew, I had a lot of bleeding, a lot of issues, etc. And they were removed, right? And each time the gyno would tell me, oh, you have to have a hysterectomy. And I said, I don't want a hysterectomy unless, it's a life or death thing. They removed fibroids. I went on, the fibroids regrew. I had to remove them again. And that was happening 3 times, right? So I definitely had an issue around that. And of course, at that time, I never put one-on-one together. But when I eventually, and that's now, I don't know, probably 8-9 years or so ago, 8 years probably, 7 years. Yeah, I started eating differently rather because I realized that I don't eat that bad, but there was a little bit too much sugar, right? I realized there was sugar in my coffee, there was sugar, in my muesli, there was sugar here and there, not excessively. And I was eating the veggies and whatever, but it's just adding up right here and there a little bit. And I realized, that was maybe not the good thing. So I changed the way of eating. I came across a really healthy detox and I did that. And literally within 2-3 weeks, my energy went up. I lost weight. My bloating disappeared. Consequently, my migraines, instead of being weekly, they're like 2-3 times a year, roughly. And I never had to do anything about my fibroids again, ever.
Wow. That's so beautiful. I would love to hear, I'm sure everybody listening too, like what changes exactly did you make? Was it just removing sugar, or were there other pieces to that you changed in your diet?
Great question. There were a lot of changes, and they were not so big actually. But yes, definitely removing sugar. And it's not, by the way, that I necessarily go sugarless completely, but removing it. So I still eat fruits, but I hardly eat any, white sugar or even brown sugar. For me, by the way, they fall in the same camp, right? I changed that. And for example, now I use other options like stevia or xylitol, or I like really coconut sugar or so. So I still have something, and that works well for me. Obviously reduce the amount of sugar in general, right? No matter what. But also it was about, cutting down on processed food. So I almost have no processed food. Yeah, I go outside and sometimes there is maybe the pizza or whatever there, right? But it's very little. I eat a clean diet probably 90% of my time, whereas I I'm okay to eat something not so healthy, not completely unhealthy, but not so healthy, maybe 10%, sometimes 20%, maybe during holidays or so. But also, it was other adaptations like lifestyle changes, do more stress management and make sure my sleep is good, improve my exercise regime. So all these other things, of course, work on my mindset. So I really believe it's a holistic approach. And initially it set it off with a detox diet, right? I got rid of of the toxins in my liver. And that was definitely the first step where I said, oh, wow, I could see the difference. And when that happened at the time, like it's always, you get a Facebook ad, because I probably Googled something around that. And that Facebook ad was for a nutrition school. That nutrition school I didn't decide on, but I researched them. I researched 60 different schools, and I decided for one. I did my certified transformational nutrition coach certification, and then after I did my master certified transformational nutrition coaching certification, where there I added 8 different specializations, like in digestive health, hormonal health, emotional eating, weight loss, diabetes, and so on, just to get a deeper idea, being able helping my clients deeper. And it's a very holistic approach. And I started basically my business, and that's where I'm helping hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yes. Oh, I love that. What a beautiful story. It's hard to go through something like that and not want to help other people do the same, right? Like, did you know? It's like we have this secret, right? Which isn't a secret. We all know that eating healthy actually makes us feel good. Or maybe actually many of you listening have never felt that, before. And hopefully listening to Andrea and all the other speakers that we have on the podcast and my story, gives you some hope for, like you mentioned, Andrea, we just start believing that this is normal, right? It's normal to be bloated and exhausted after every meal. It's normal to, have really horrible bowel movements. It's normal to, like, all these things that we think is normal because our friends have it too, right? And that's really not the case. And when you go through something like even a detox, right, it becomes so eye-opening that, like, ooh, I can't really ignore this anymore, right? Like, I think something needs to change, right? Because this is the new addiction, is like feeling like having energy all day. I remember for me, that was like, wow, like I don't have to be exhausted at 2:00 every day. Like, that was just life-changing. So.
And it's really great. And I fully agree on that, and I see it now, I'm now like menopause, beyond age and whatever. So I went through this whole peri and menopause stage with almost no issues, right? I didn't put any weight on. I mean, I'm always like 2 pounds up and down, but, maybe even 4, but that's fine, no more. But I also didn't have any of those symptoms. All my friends were that age as well, right, have like the night sweats or whatever it is. I had that hardly, because my hormones are balanced, right? And that really, I believe, is due to a healthy nutrition. And when I say nutrition, it's not only the food, it's really the holistic approach, nourishing my body to the best abilities, and allowing that everything is as balanced as possibly I can.
Yeah. And I love, obviously you're talking about, this food freedom, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but like, what you're sharing about, the 90-10, in your diet, and what you're finding works for you is really beautiful. That that lovely free relationship with food, which is really neat. And yeah, just to touch on what you were just mentioning, I think it is really important for people to know, and this is what we're all about here on the podcast, right? To know that these quote unquote symptoms are not just because you're getting older. Like, I can't tell you how many people I talk to are like, well, it's just part of aging, right? I'm just going to have these symptoms show up because I'm getting older, right? Like, well, I'm just going to be in pain for the rest of my life, or, oh, I'm just going to always sleep bad or have night sweats, right? Like, there's so much disempowerment and misbelief around like the actual control that we have over those symptoms, and that it's not actually just because you're getting older. There's usually a hormone imbalance or lots of other things going on. So I think that's just important. I wanted to pull that out of what you said. Like, this is really an empowering place to be, when you know that you have control over, like, you don't have to have night sweats. You don't have to have headaches. You don't have to gain weight when you get older. You don't have to be in pain, right? And immobile as you age, right? With arthritis. Like, these are things that we do have so much power over, and our system doesn't want you to know that, right? And hopefully, listening to this is starting to plant that seed for you.
True. And also, I mean, often we are told by doctors, oh, it's normal, don't worry. I mean, it's just, it is like it is, accept it or so. But also really important, I think, it's to understand that we can really control even things like genetically, genetics. Basically, I hear often like, oh, in my family, everybody had diabetes, or, whatever it is, or is fat. And so I have to be. So one, it's often the mindset that plays a role, like the subconscious believes it has to go there. But more importantly, it's, I believe, through chronic diseases, and which often genetically, there's genetics. Of course, we cannot completely control, or we cannot control that, but we can definitely control the environment. And I always say that genetics loads the gun, and the environment pulls the trigger, right? And so, which means it's great, because that means you have a choice actually of doing something. You have some control. So by changing approaches like improving your diet, your lifestyle, or so, you can definitely overcome, those genetics. And I see it. I have so many clients with, diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, whatever, and it runs in their family, but we are able to get those down, or to
Yeah.
a better level or normal level.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, we have this power. That was a huge motivator for me, Andrea, starting is like looking at my genetic history, or like genetic future with my family riddled with every chronic disease, and learn as soon as I learned about that, like, wow, I actually can turn on and off these genes and make, at least give myself the best chance to, avoid these illnesses. It's such a beautiful, empowering place to be. And it is also a bit overwhelming. So anybody listening who's like maybe suffering with some of these chronic diseases, taking that full ownership and being like, ooh, I could have done something about this, like, can sometimes be a tough pill to swallow. And remember, you can still do something about it. Just if you're just learning this stuff now, that's okay, right? That's all part of your journey. And there's still so much that you can do, right? And change and shift back. So absolutely love that. I know one of your specialties, Andrea, and I really want to dive into this, is helping women lose weight. And I think, as women, we're always on that quest, right? There's always like, oh, that little bit, which, is a conversation of how much we're actually hard on ourselves versus how, when we actually do need to lose weight for our health. But why do you think, and, what have you seen in your practice with, why it's so hard for most women, especially, to lose weight, this constant battle year after year? What's really going on there?
What I think, and what I really found out, with the experience working with my clients and how people come to see me, is they are usually having tried, diet after diet, right? They try this approach, that approach, whatever they are called, and usually they don't work, right? Sometimes people lose, or nothing, right? But they usually always put back the weight on. And what I find out is that they're kind of using like a band-aid, right? It's like when you take a medicine, a pill, or whatever, it's just a band-aid, but they're not looking at the root cause of whatever is going on, why they lost why they put on the weight, and the struggle to lose it, right? So very often it's a combination of different root causes. It can be, like we talked about, hormones, of course, hormone imbalance, right? But then we need to know, okay, why is there a hormone imbalance, right? So the root cause of the root cause, right? So we need to dive a little bit deeper and, of course, address those. We need to look at things like life changes. And, for example, through life, our digestive system changes, especially if we maybe don't eat that healthy. Eventually it takes a toll, right? If we have a little wound there and we poke, the wound eventually gets bigger and bigger, and it gets worse and gets inflamed. The same thing is happening more or less in our gut, right? When we put the wrong food in, eventually our gut suffers, and digestive issues, of course, can lead to other things. And in the body, everything is really connected. And often people forget it's not only just the unhealthy, like the processed food or something like that, but it's also sometimes the unhealthy for that person. For example, if you are intolerant to dairy or gluten and you don't know it, and it's not, I don't say allergic, because allergic you would know immediately, right? But intolerant can be bloating, for example, or even other symptoms. and you just don't know. Not everybody knows these things, right? And you continue eating. It's like poison. You can literally eat poison, and eventually, that can then lead to full-blown leaky gut or other issues, right? And all these things can be that the inflammation levels in your body goes up. And when body is in high inflammation, normally if it's short, it's fine. But if it's a chronic, the body puts on something to protect itself. And guess what? It's fat, because the body might, be in danger. So obviously it keeps on to the fat to protect itself for those lean times. And that can be, there's so many areas there on the physical, biochemical side and so on, but also often people, I think, forget that is more on the emotional side. And there we go a little bit. What I work a lot with my clients on is emotional eating and cravings and all that. And you mentioned the Food Freedom Festival. We speak a lot about it. But, I work a lot with my clients around that, because it's easy to say, oh, eat the apple, right? But when you're coming home after a difficult day, your boss yelled at you, maybe you have a fight with your partner, or you're just like bored or fed up with whatever you're doing. You come home, you sit in front of your TV, and you have this big bag of chips or cookies or whatever it is. You just eat it, right? You should not, but you still do it. And that's also the issue in there. So if you look at all these things, we then need to look at the root cause of those reasons, right? Emotional, spiritual, whatever, and put that all together and address it.
Yeah. Wow. That makes so much sense. And, that's a lot of the things that, I know and teach in my practice, and a lot of you, listening to this podcast have hopefully starting to wrap your head around. And I love that, Andrea, like looking at the root cause of the root cause, because we can so easily, well, not easily, because most of us are still in the like Band-Aid approach, right? Or most people. But so step one is like even asking, like, why does this problem exist? It's with anything in our life. I remember when I learned that, it was just so eye-opening. It was like, you can't find a solution to a problem until you know why the problem exists. So whatever problem that is, whether it's in your work or your relationships or with your health, right? I really love that piece and weaving it in, and what you're sharing about it being so multifaceted and holistic. It's never just one thing. Our human bodies are so complicated, and there's so much at play that sometimes it can be overwhelming, but it can also be empowering when we start to just ask those questions, right? And get the right guidance, from the right people who know how to help you figure that out. And really, yeah, really beautifully. I just love that you said that root cause of root cause. I think that's really helpful for a lot of people, because we can know, okay, well, I'm stuck and not losing weight, or I keep gaining weight because I'm binging at night, right? Or I'm eating at night. And okay, it's because I'm emotional. It's because I'm emotional eating. Great. Okay. So we know there's a root cause, but why are you emotionally eating? Right? Why are you unable to handle those emotions without food? Yeah. So there's so many conversations below that, and it's so powerful when we are able to start getting to that root. And something I'm really passionate about as well. We could talk about this forever, but so good. I hope that that's really, really landing for everyone out there to at least start investigating, like, why am I struggling to lose weight? Even asking that question. We don't ask why questions enough. We just start shaming ourselves right away. Like, oh, I'm just lazy, or I'm never going to lose the weight, or I guess this is just my genetics. We pass so much of our power away instead of being curious and wanting to dive in to see what's really there.
Very true. And I think a good idea to start with this is, just by paying attention to it. So often, we rush through our life and ignore those little triggers or what's going on. And I really like, to journal and write down, for example, okay, each time, what's going on in my head, each time I sit down with those cookies or ice cream or whatever your thing is, right? And see how I feel, or, journal about the food you're eating and how you feel after. Do I have bloating? Do I have pain? Is my energy up or down? I had a great sample, when at one stage in Miami, we had to move out because our house or our apartment got inundated. And I was eating healthy. It was just like not too long ago, right? I was already a nutrition coach, talking my walk and all that. And I basically changed from my usual smoothie to oats, healthy oats with, fruits and everything. And I had to take a nap every afternoon. My energy was gone just because the oats that are healthy, it's nothing wrong with oats, but it was just too carbish for me, right? And that makes tired, right? So things like that are often something you can really find out by journaling, right? By being aware, or just, making sure you drink your water. And I'm just drinking water now, and I invite you all.
Yes, let's all have a sip. I've got my peppermint tea here. Mm. Yeah, I love that, Andrea. That's so journaling and just keeping track of these things is so powerful, and having someone as well to talk it out with. I know, like, when I'm going through things, which is always because I'm a human being, just the other day, I was really appreciating having a chat with my personal coach with some of the things that are showing up for me. And oh yeah, having her reflect back like, oh, okay, yes, there's some of these things that I wasn't aware of, right? It's gonna be really helpful to have a journal to keep yourself accountable to kind of seeing those trends, or really getting honest with yourself. Because when we don't write things down or talk with someone else about it, or however you process, like, it's so easy to just pretend nothing's happening, right? Or like there's nothing wrong, or that we don't really know what's happening. But when you put it down on paper, it's just like, well, I don't know where all my time goes in the day. And you start tracking it and you're like, oh, that was 2 hours on Facebook. Right. Okay. So we get to like call ourselves out of it when we have to write it down, which is helpful. So helpful. Yeah. So let's talk about cravings, because I know this is another area that you are really, really an expert in. And I know a lot of you listening are maybe in this space where you're struggling still with sugar cravings or food cravings in general, on a daily basis. And I know one of the biggest misconceptions or challenges that many of you maybe listening have can be this, like, wanting to eat healthy and get off processed food, and really minimize sugar or eliminate sugar altogether. And there is this really big block, and I notice this with all my clients as well, this fear of giving that up, right? There's almost like this belief that I'm going to be deprived, right? Like without cookies and ice cream and McDonald's, I'm going to be completely deprived and feel like I'm missing out on all the good things in life. So what are your thoughts and opinions on really how, to overcome cravings without feeling deprived?
It's a tough one. And I think it's for everybody a little bit different. Some people are like, oh, I feel deprived, I don't want it, but eventually I get there. And some people are also on a little bit more the spectrum of addiction. So there's a slight difference there. And by the way, in the Food Freedom Festival, I have a lot of specialists, and we discuss this difference there, because often people are not sure, is it just like emotional eating cravings, or are they food addicted or sugar addicted or so? And it's a very interesting part. But speaking more about the craving and emotional eating, which is a little bit more my jam, if I may say so, what I find out is that working with my clients, usually it's like, oh, I don't want to lose out, or I don't want to punish my body, or something like that. And what most people don't realize is actually they have been punishing their body by eating unhealthy or doing unhealthy habits or whatever, right? And by changing that slowly is, of course, where you nourish your body. So just actually seeing it from another point of view, it's like this. It's much easier. And what I see very often happening with my clients is when they start working with me, they crave, whatever the food they crave. Usually they crave it, let's say a sweet food like ice cream. And I tell them they will crave vegetables in 2-3 weeks. And they look at me and they laugh. And I kind of, oh, Andrea, I think you don't know me, right? And I said, well, it's okay, no problem. I understand, but let's just see who's going to have the last laugh. And guess what happens after 2, 3, sometimes 4 weeks it happens. It's me usually who giggles, right? And of course, it's nice for them. But in the end, where I'm getting at is that taking a holistic approach is what's really important. So we talked about the root cause. So obviously that is one thing, because if there is a root cause, like for example, digestive issues, you want to address that. And I go a little bit deeper because then it becomes easier actually. So on that side is, for example, we have our gut bacteria, right? And as you probably all know, the gut has lots and lots and lots of bacteria, and they're the good guys and the bad guys. And usually when we eat too much sugar, and when I say sugar, I of course mean also like things that are seen by the body in as glucose, which can be milk sugar, which can be, flour, all these kind of things. Your body sees it as sugar. So all these things count as well. And eventually the bad guys are fed by that glucose, by that sugar, right? And the more they get to eat, the more they grow and the more they want, and they send brains to your signal and saying, hey, bring me more food. And that's of course when we eat more and have cravings as well. So the idea is to starving these guys basically, and feeding more the good guys so they can take over, right? So that's already very important to understand, that you can make it easier. There are plenty of other ways working around neurotransmitters, for example, serotonin, and all these kind of things, which by the way is mostly produced in the gut as well. So working on all these things can make it much easier, because once you start and you realize how good you feel, you are gonna crave the vegetable, right? And then it's easier. The other part on there is also really important, is again to go back to the root cause, but look at the emotion. So very often we try to fill, like you mentioned, Danielle, earlier, is we fill like a void, right? So we are bored, we are stressed, we are anxious, sad, whatever, doesn't matter. And it can, by the way, also be happy, right? I mean, we are so used to eat at weddings or things like that, right? So we have to look always what it is, but usually it's more a negative emotion, of course, and looking at that, what is going on there. And like we said, put a journal together and see what comes up. Maybe it's just boredom, and just by going on a walk, we don't need to eat anymore, or calling a friend, or starting a hobby, or whatever it is. So these things can obviously help to overcome those cravings. And like we said, sometimes it's just that you're dehydrated, and by drinking water and looking at that, you're not having cravings anymore.
I love that. I'm so glad that you mentioned that part, because I think that's such a big piece that people forget when it comes to this like deprivation conversation, right? It's really starting to ask, like, why can't you live without that thing? Right? Like what's the real like attachment or control, or like the mental and emotional piece that's like, you can't live without a certain food. Right? Like that's a red flag, right? Like there's something going on there. If you're like, I can't physically exist if I can never, if I don't ever have ice cream again, and I'm feeling deprived of that. Right? What are you actually being deprived of? And we could talk about this forever, I'm sure, because there's so much deep like questioning that we can do around like, what's really behind that fear of deprivation? Like, what are you afraid of actually missing out on? Is it joy? Is it like the happiness that food gives you that you don't have in other places of your life? Like, getting really honest around that is scary and eye-opening, but very important, right? If you actually are wanting to lose weight, get healthy, have energy, all these amazing benefits that come from eating whole, real foods, it's quite eye-opening to start, getting honest with yourself about that.
It is. And it's like you say, it's scary. And often people are scared, right? So they have something called self-sabotage, right? And self-sabotage or procrastination is actually based on fear. So some people have that fear of failure, but actually most people have the fear of success, right? What if they get there, right? And lose the weight they want to lose, or improve their health? Will they still be the same person, even though they know it might be better for them, but they are afraid because they don't know. The body doesn't know, the mind doesn't know if it's going to be better, right? It's just something new, and people are by nature in general afraid of anything new, any change, right? We are always like, oh no change, help, will the people still like me? Or even the contrary, my husband wants me thinner and he will love me more, but he should actually love me no matter if I'm thick or thin, right? So that's coming in there as well. So there are a lot of things. And then of course we go back, like you mentioned, in the past, in our childhood, maybe there was some trauma. I have a lot of clients who, and just as a sample, I mean, there are various samples, some, they have been molested and put on weight to protect themselves. I have other people who have been, parents come home when they were a child and they're tired because they worked so much, and they put the kid in front of TV with a bag of chips, right? So they can like breathe eventually. And of course, the child thinks, oh, my parents don't love me, but the chips love me, right? And that's why they hang on to those chips or whatever. I mean, there's so many areas around it. And exploring those is, of course, what is, in my opinion, 80% of the work you and I do with our clients, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I agree with like so much of what you're saying is stuff that I very much love talking about as well. And I love that you just mentioned like the fear, failure, and success, because we literally just had this conversation on the podcast a couple episodes ago. So if anybody missed that episode, wants to kind of dive more into this fear, failure, and success piece, and it's really eye-opening when we can start to shift our relationship with fear in general. I mean, those are kind of the two biggest ones, but fear is not a great place to make decisions from. Let's just say that. But it's something that we all deal with, because that's very much like our ego subconscious trying to keep us safe, and that's okay. But we can learn to kind of work around it to really get what we want, right? And be healthy. So I love that. So coming back to like sugar cravings and our blood sugar, what are some foods that help balance blood sugar? Like, we haven't had this conversation yet on the podcast, so I really would love to hear from you. What are certain foods or hacks or things that people can start paying attention to, maybe if they're not quite ready to give up sugar or all processed foods yet, but want to start balancing their blood sugar in a healthy way?
Great question. And maybe just to put it or add it here, I mean, blood sugar is all going in the area of hormones, right? Because it's in fact, related to your insulin levels, which control, or that is all linked together, which has a link to all your other hormones as well. And that, by the way, plays a big role with your stress levels, which is also your hormones, your sleep, your hunger and satiety hormones. Just to put that all together, when we speak about blood sugars, to understand that when we are able to have our blood sugar a little bit more stabilized, it will have a positive ripple effect on others. And blood sugar also is super important in terms of our, energy during the day, right? And often you can see that you eat something like something sugary or so, you feel like a high, and after maybe half an hour, probably an hour, it crushes down. You're tired, you have a pick me up and down, and that's, by the way, super unhealthy, because eventually it can affect your insulin, and that can obviously lead to other health issues. Now, in terms of the blood sugar, stabilizing the blood sugar, most people are, what I've seen, eating far too much carbs, right? Carb-rich foods. And they say, oh no, but it's not so much. And I can tell you, I almost all the time see too much, right?
Yeah.
And I don't say it's unhealthy, right? I mean, that they eat necessarily unhealthy, but, it's in general, most people, and by the way, a lot of people who are vegan or vegetarian, I see that as well. Not that I say it's not unhealthy, but their way of eating vegan and vegetarian might be unhealthy. And what is missing there is basically 2-3 things. So instead of having too much carbs, lower the carbs. I don't say exclude them, right? But lower them and increase the protein. And probably the increase of the protein, in my opinion, is the biggest part of to balance your blood sugar throughout the day and help you also with cravings, right? So, and most people, and especially women, by the way, are eating not enough protein. So just by adding enough protein, especially early in the morning, and at lunchtime, is super important, because that's, of course, when you want to be energetic and have your blood sugar more stable. And the other thing that I think is as well important for blood sugar, and also, by the way, for weight loss, and both protein is important for your weight loss too, is to have enough fiber. Most people, and the standard American diet is 10 grams and less per day, whereas ideally you want to be 30-35 grams and might be even more per day of fiber, which you can find like in vegetable, fruit, beans, and things like that. So that would be important. And also sometimes pay attention to fat. We need fat, we need healthy fat, of course. So not just any fat, but healthy fat like avocado, nuts, seeds, maybe olive oil or so, to add them, not overly, but always add that, because of course that's important as well to hold it all together.
Yeah. Yes, I love that you mentioned that. And you know, some of you may have already heard this before, right? The protein, the fat, like these things are really important, and let this be a reminder, you know, to see where you can start adding these more in your life. And you know, willing to bet, Andrea, and I know you'll say the same, like that was probably the shift that you noticed, right? When you were moving and you were eating just porridge with fruit, right? Like especially in the morning. And I noticed this mostly in like my hunger. Like if I do that, we used to eat porridge for breakfast all the time, and I would add chia seeds and peanut butter, and you know, I'd add all these things to it that, you know, were fats and some plant-based proteins, but I would be hungry 2 hours later. Like no matter how I did it, I was hungry 2 hours later, no matter how much I ate. And now when I eat, you know, eggs and sausage and avocado for breakfast and sauerkraut, like I've got, you know, quite the assortment and vegetables for breakfast. Like sometimes it's 3 o'clock and I'm like, oh my goodness, I forgot to eat lunch. Like because my body's, you know, satiated. So it's really cool to kind of play around with that for yourself. And obviously all of our bodies are so unique and different, but I love that reminder of, you know, these blood stabling pieces that are so important that we forget. And I laughed because I know we both have had this experience with clients, with myself. I'm laughing at myself because I used to always say that, like, I don't eat much sugar. I don't eat that much. Right. And then as soon as I started tracking it, I could not lie to myself anymore. Right. It's so fascinating. Like we think, yeah, like it was kind of like I was hiding, right? No, I'm good. And then I look at like, you know, the oats and the flour I was having and the baked good and the, you know, the honey I was adding to my coffee, like all these pieces really adding up and going, wow, okay, maybe there's more than I thought. Right. So, you know, I'm
Sure.
laughing at that because I think so many out there listening might be in that place right now. And, you know, really getting honest with yourself and tracking that can be eye-opening. Like, oh, maybe I do eat more simple carbs and sugar than I thought. And then like, I'm going to do something about it, right? Or not, if you're not ready,
Absolutely.
right?
That's then your decision, right? At least you know, when you know, you can take a decision and take the consequences with it. But I just wanted to add also, it's sometimes not only like the sort of bad sugar, but sometimes it can just be too many fruits in your diet. I had one client, you know, she was literally, she had no bad carbs and all that. She cleaned up, and I said, but you're eating too many fruits, right? There were fruit like 2, 3 servings in the morning, in the snack, at lunchtime, maybe a fruit as dessert, some snack in the afternoon, maybe something in the evening or so. And she ended up having, I don't know, 6, 8 servings of fruit per day. And that's sugar too. Not that I say it's unhealthy, but too much might be too much as well. So also to look at that. I mean, there's so many little bits and pieces here and there to look at, right?
Ah, yes, absolutely. And you know, we're all at different stages as well. So anybody listening, like, don't get overwhelmed, right? You know, if fruit is what you need to stop eating ice cream, I say go for it, right? Like,
Sure.
you know, I
You're
say that's going to
absolutely
be
right.
so much better. And I know you agree, Andrea. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can start looking at when you feel like you've got that, right? Maybe you start looking at having less mangoes and bananas and more blueberries and oranges, right? Or you know, starting to shift that and see if you need that to kind of shift out of this dependency, then, you know, go for it. Right. And I think this kind of slides nicely into the next thing that I wanted to ask you, Andrea, and this next conversation, obviously, as we've been teasing about the Food Freedom Festival, you know, what is food freedom? You know, I talk about sugar freedom all the time. And, you know, I'd love to hear your definition of food freedom and the way that you use it. And I also know that you talk about these 5 steps to food freedom. So would love to hear what those are as well.
Absolutely. So yes, it's actually quite funny that I'm a lot about food freedom, and you have the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I think that's why we
Yes.
get on so well, right? So I don't have an official definition. Maybe I have to come up with one day. But for me, basically, is, you know, so often our actions are kind of given by some food, right? Or ruled by some food, right? Decisions around food. So, you know, some people, they say, oh, but, you know, I need to eat, or they think all the time, are overwhelmed. What should I cook? You know, should I eat this thing? Can I eat this? Can't I eat this? Will that make me fat? Will that make me thin, or whatever? And a lot of the people who see me, they're literally overwhelmed. And I believe that's being like in a jail, right? Like you feel restricted, you feel worried, you know, it controls you. In the end, it's it controls you, and you are not anymore in control. And it's not that you want to be in control of everything, but it's definitely getting out of this being controlled and having a better relationship with food and with your body, with yourself, right? And when I say body, it's not only the body, it's your body, mind, soul, right? Is then when you achieve what I call food freedom.
I love that. I love that.
And
And what are the 5 steps then? How do we get there? How do we do this?
yes, so easy, right? So the 5 steps, I call them my 5R steps, and I mentioned a lot already during our talk, so it probably just puts it all together. So first of all is recognize the root cause, right? We talked about the root cause, no matter if it's emotional, physical, or whatever. Then it's reset the body's healing abilities. Often the body cannot heal, right? It's kind of stuck. Even if you do the right thing, it's kind of stuck, and the body can only heal and we can lose weight once it's healed, right? So I go back to the liver and the detox I did at that time, when I started to realize my own journey, how the food improved my own health issues was with that detox. So because I got rid of the toxins, and that really allowed then for more flow, because you can imagine it like a pipe in your house. If that pipe is stuck, nothing will go back and forth, right? So the same in your body. Once that's achieved, then we can repair the root cause, address all these things. And then very often I find that people have forgotten those healthy habits. Maybe, what your grandmother shared with you. Eat 3 meals a day, right? Or eat your vegetables, or, all these kind of things, or the sleep hygiene. We are all with our phones, and, until late in the evenings, we are, excess blue light from the electronics. We go to bed maybe too late. We don't sleep our 8 hours. We don't do any stress management, like, going for a walk or stopping to be always bombarded with news or so, so learning habits around that. And of course, healthy eating habits, make it easy. Like when you brush your teeth, I mean, we all brush our teeth, I hope so, at least morning and evening. But I ask you now, do you think about it? Right. So in the end, you want to learn those habits. And that's very important in cravings as well. And I maybe should have said it even earlier, is, once you have these habits in place, you don't need to think anymore. You can just follow those habits and you don't have those cravings anymore, right? You override those cravings actually, because you can lean on those habits. And then the last step is rewire your mindset. And that's super important as well, right? We talked about self-sabotage, limiting beliefs and all that. So when we rewire them, then of course, it's much easier as well. And that's my food freedom formula.
I love it. Okay. Can you quickly recap the 4 or
Okay.
5 R's?
5 R's.
5
Okay.
R's. Okay.
So recognize the root cause.
Yeah.
Reset your body's healing abilities, repair the root cause, relearn healthy habits, rewire your mindset.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's so powerful. That is the recipe, everybody, for food freedom. I agree with all of those. That is really absolutely some powerful work, and take some time. Let's be honest. A lot of that stuff is going to take some time to work on, but it's so worth it. I know you and I both, Andrea, living in this place of freedom and peace with food is like, I would go back and go through all the struggles again and again and again, just to be in this place, where I'm no longer guilting and shaming and being in control. So anybody who's feeling a bit daunted by all those, like, don't worry. Okay. It's so worth it. You'll be grateful that you did it. Yeah. So before we wrap things up, Andrea, let's talk about the Food Freedom Festival. I mean, so excited. This is happening. By the time this interview airs, the festival's the next week. So if everybody listening to this, this kicks off June 2nd, and I am so excited to be one of the incredible speakers. I just actually saw the lineup that you have of all the other speakers, Andrea, and I'm so excited to tune into some other talks and would love to hear from you. What can people expect? What's the Food Freedom Festival all about, and why should they come and join?
Oh, it's for me, it's the exciting moment of my year. I think I did it last year already. This year, I just made it bigger and better, and I have more amazing speakers like you. And I'm so happy, Danielle, that you are there. So because I work around food freedom, I really said, okay, how can I get my word out in a bigger way, right? How can I reach more people? How can I amplify and get also other people's experiences and expertise, right? I mean, I know probably a lot like you, but we don't know all, right? We are experts in our field, but not experts in everything. And there's so many bits and pieces and parts in, in achieving food freedom, right? We mentioned it already. So I invited over 25 speakers, actually we're 26 now, who share with us in the Food Freedom Festival, which is from the 2nd to the 5th of June. So in a couple of days only after this airs, basically their expertise around how to achieve food freedom. So I have several experts from the health field, of course, even some from other fields, where we talk either about maybe how to lose weight and their approach, how to get there, how to overcome cravings. We have emotional eating experts. I have plenty of doctors there as well who bring in their holistic experience. I have some people also speaking about addiction and how to overcome that or address that rather. So I have really amazing speakers. I must say I'm very proud and very happy to have you, Danielle, and plenty of other speakers, who really are top level and share their experience and their expertise with us. So all that over those 4 days that we have those talks. Additionally, each speaker has a really great gift. And so we share that. I have also, by the way, should you not be able to attend directly, so it's for free. Sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier. So it's for free over those 4 days, but some people maybe want either to go deeper, they want to keep the talks, or maybe they're just not available. So we will have also a VIP version of it, where you can basically buy the talks and keep them forever, and you get the audio and the transcripts and all this together. And we have a great talk, Danielle. I know that you're sharing the missing ingredient in creating a healthy relationship with food that lasts, right? So we're talking a lot of really, really great things, what are the most common mistakes when people try to kick sugar, and how the whole emotional health and the relationship with food works. And we talk about you also, how actually, and we talked earlier today, how you craved veggies instead of sugar. So if you want to know, Danielle shares everything there. So there are a lot of really great things that you can learn with various experts. And there will be the link, I'm sure, somewhere here in the description where people can sign up.
Yeah, I'll make sure. Thank you so much, Andrea. I'm so excited for this event. It's going to be such a fun week. And I hope everybody's going to come and join us. Like Andrea said, it's free. It's free to join and watch live, like most of these summits are really to, I can see your passion and very similar to mine, and just helping people in whatever way we can and getting this information out there and access to this information without cost. So that's really, really incredible. And you have options obviously for people. So yeah, anybody who wants to come and get registered, the link is below this episode in the show notes. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it's down below as well. I'll make sure the link is everywhere. I'll probably have it on my, Instagram bio and different places as well. So you'll be able to find it. Come get registered and come and obviously watch my talk. Thank you for giving a little shout out to what we talked about. Yeah, it was really fun having that conversation with you, Andrea. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing some of the other experts and continuing to learn myself. And you've just put together such a beautiful event. So a huge thank you to all the hard work I know that it takes to put on a summit. And hopefully we'll see, anybody, all of you there, everybody who's listening to this. Hopefully you're already registered before we're done this episode.
Absolutely. I would love to meet you all.
Yes. All right. Well, where can everybody find more about you online, Andrea? What are your places where people can come and soak in and learn more about you? I mean, this has been such an incredible chat, and we'll have to have you back, of course, but for people who want to take this farther and get to know you a bit more, where can they find you online?
Okay, great. Yeah, I would love to have that chat again. We can definitely dive deeper in certain areas. So people can find me, of course, at the Food Freedom Festival as a one, but I have, of course, my business, which is called Wellness Methods, and the website is wellnessmethods.com, and the handle on, I think, Facebook and Instagram is the same. So Wellness Methods, and I'm sure you share here the links as well. So you can find me there, and just, contact me also if you want maybe to go a little bit deeper and dive deeper and find out more. You can always usually offer some sessions or so you can contact me, and I'm very happy to help you. And there's lots of free stuff on my website as well, so feel free to go there.
Amazing. Yes, everybody, if you resonated at all with anything that Andrea shared today, go reach out, connect with her. I'll make sure the links are below. And this has been absolutely an incredible chat, Andrea. I love talking to you. We really jive well, and I can't wait to have more conversations with you and really, continue banding together to impact the world and change lives in such a meaningful and holistically beautiful way. So thank you for all that you do. And thank you for coming on today to share some of your wisdom amongst all the craziness and planning of a summit. I know what it's like. I used to do it. And we really, really appreciate you and are so grateful for you being here today.
Danielle, thank you for having me, and especially for this talk. That was amazing. I mean, already having you as my guest was great, but it's amazing being a guest on your show. So thank you so much. And I look forward, to this festival together and meeting everybody.
Yes, amazing. Well, thank you everybody for tuning into another episode, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode. If you're loving what we talked about today, please remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone you love. And if you're ready to dive deeper into discovering your root causes and patterns that are keeping you hooked on sugar, be sure to check out our brand new free workshop series that will help you kick emotional eating for good. Find the link to download this free series and other amazing resources in the show notes below.